Infertility is very hard to go through. About a year into our marriage, I suffered a miscarriage. Just adopt. If I were you, that's what I would do. But you're not me. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know how I feel. Hello, my name is Shockley. I live in Waukesha, Wisconsin. I'm a dental hygienist, and my husband Kevin and I have been struggling with infertility for 4 years. Social media has definitely helped spread awareness about infertility, and it's been very helpful. Before marriage, or before we started trying to conceive, infertility, I didn't think about it. I didn't know about it. I grew up in a family with 10 children. My parents had 10 kids together. So I didn't even know that infertility existed. I didn't know that people struggled to have babies or had problems getting pregnant at all. About a year into our marriage, I suffered a miscarriage. I don't know how far along I was. I think it was pretty early. I didn't even know that I was pregnant. The reason I found out was because I was bleeding a lot, like for 2 weeks straight, and it was a lot of bleeding. So I looked online and somebody said to take a pregnancy test, and I did, and it said I was pregnant. So obviously I knew it wasn't a good sign. I called my doctor and they did a blood test, and then later on the nurse called me to congratulate me on my pregnancy. Obviously she didn't get the memo about all the pain and bright heavy bleeding I was having, but it was pretty quick. I think it's considered a chemical pregnancy technically. Quickly after we got married, we literally started trying to get pregnant on our wedding night. And we were pretty naive. We thought it was going to happen very quickly, especially with how fertile my family was. And Kevin has 4 siblings, so his family was pretty fertile too. So after the first few months, I'd say I was kind of like, okay, what's going on? You know, something's up. But definitely at the year mark, the 1 year mark, I mean, confirms that, you know, there's something going on. And I'd say the 1 year mark is when we knew that we were struggling with infertility. It was also at the 1 year mark that we discovered my husband Kevin had testicular cancer. So he had to have surgery to remove the malignant testicle, and then he had to do radiation treatment. And it was at the same time that I suffered the miscarriage. We did not immediately tell family or friends about our struggles with infertility. I think they kind of assumed, you know, after somebody gets married, you know, everyone's like, when are you gonna have kids? So, you know, they kept asking us, and eventually we just started saying, we've been trying, but nothing's been happening. So I think they kind of got the hint then that we were struggling with infertility, but now we're 4 years into our struggle with infertility. So, you know, obviously they kind of know now. And I also share it on my social media page on Instagram. So that's been very helpful. Our families have been very supportive with our infertility and with our fertility treatment. It's been pretty tough, especially coming from a big family. You know, my younger sisters and siblings are getting married, and they're starting to have kids. And I mean, that's a struggle in itself when you're trying so hard to have children and you see everyone around you getting pregnant so easily. Our most challenging experience through our infertility journey, there's been quite a few. Obviously, you know, discovering my husband had testicular cancer, that was huge. That was a very emotional and traumatic time for us. This last December, we did our first IVF cycle, and we were so hopeful. We got so many eggs. I have PCOS, so we expected to get a lot of eggs. But at the end, when they only told us we had 2 embryos that made it, we did the genetic testing after that, and the results came back that our 2 embryos were abnormal and we couldn't use them. So that was devastating for so many reasons. But it was just a hard time, especially around Christmas when we had we're really looking forward to it and looking forward to the new year of, possibly having a baby and starting our family. So I would say our first IVF cycle was very tough. I wish I would have known at the beginning of our journey. I think one, just knowing that infertility exists. I had no idea about it. I had no idea that my husband and I would be struggling with trying to have a baby. And just realizing that, not everyone gets pregnant very easily, and some people, just having sex is never gonna get you pregnant. I also wish we would have started earlier. I wish we would have looked into our problems sooner. At the 1 year mark, I think that's when we knew something was wrong. But with our miscarriage and then my husband's testicular cancer, we waited a long time after that to seek fertility treatment. So if I could go back and give myself some advice, I would say, one, start earlier with fertility treatment, and two, just understand infertility and know that there's a lot of people struggling with it and it's not just you. So when we started seeing a fertility specialist, I think we were 2.5 years into our journey. So we started with our first IUI last July, and then that one wasn't successful. We did our second in August. And IUI stands for intrauterine insemination. So it's a lot less invasive than IVF. Basically what you do is you take medications, and then 2 days before you do the IUI procedure, you do a trigger shot, which just goes in your belly, and that forces you to ovulate. So the goal still is for the sperm and the egg to meet. On the day of the procedure, my husband comes in and does his part, and then they do what's called washing the sperm, where they get the best sperm out of there. And then they put the sperm in a catheter, and then they put it up me. It's not as likely to get pregnant as IVF. There's less of a chance, but it's also a lot less expensive and a lot less invasive than IVF is. And then for IVF, we did our first IVF cycle this last December, and wound up with no normal embryos. And then we did our most recent IVF cycle, our second one, in April, so last month. And we did get one healthy embryo after genetic testing. So after 2 IUIs and 2 rounds of IVF, we have 1 embryo to work with to hopefully get pregnant. IVF process is a lot longer. There's a lot more that goes into it. It's a lot more expensive, but basically what you're doing is you're doing shots every day. This last cycle, I did 4 shots a day. I did 2 in the morning and 2 at night. And you do that for 10 days, or at least I did mine for 10 days. Some people do it, like 6 days, and some are maybe like 14 days or longer. And then basically you go in every 1 to 3 days to the fertility clinic, and they do a vaginal ultrasound, and they're checking the ovaries. They want to make sure things still look good, that the eggs aren't getting too big or not too small, so they adjust your medications based on that. So once it's go time and your doctor says that you're ready for the egg retrieval, you do another trigger shot. But this one goes in your butt because it goes through muscles, so it's a little more uncomfortable than doing it in your belly. But then you do the egg retrieval, and it's basically what it sounds like. You're literally getting the eggs out of the ovaries. So for me, my clinic does general anesthesia, luckily, so I don't remember any of it. But they take a needle and go up your vagina, and then go into the wall to your ovaries. And they pull every little egg out of each side. So once you wake up, you're kind of groggy, but you're, in some pain. It's not, totally, painless, but it's not terrible. My first IVF cycle, I got so sick. I was throwing up for the whole next day. I think it was because of the general anesthesia. I've never had it before. The second time they gave me something for it, so I didn't throw up, which was nice, but I was still in quite a bit of pain. I'd say it takes about, for me at least, a full week to kind of recover from it. So once they retrieve all the eggs, this is when the embryologist gets involved. There's also a lot that goes into it. They take my husband's sperm, and this last time I think we did 2 different techniques to help get the best sperm. And then for us, they did ICSI, where they put the sperm directly in the egg. So you know the sperm got in the egg. The next day, they let you know how many eggs were successfully fertilized, which is good, so you don't have to wait too long to hear that. But then the next 5 days is so long because they wait for them to grow, and they have to meet all the marks. Usually by day 5 or day 6, the embryo hits this stage called the blastocyst stage. That means it's basically a full-fledged embryo. There's different qualities, and they kind of do different grading scales on them. But for us, our first cycle, we had 2 embryos that made it. And then we decided to do genetic testing. And for that, they take a little piece of the outside of the embryo, the placenta. They take a few cells and then send it to the genetic lab. And then they test that to see if the chromosomes are normal or not for the embryo. For an IVF transfer, that's when they transfer the embryo into the uterus. I've never made it this far, so this is all new to me, but I will be doing shots of progesterone in my butt through the muscle, so it's not gonna feel too great, for up to 10 weeks. So that's quite a few shots. I also do an oral medication, and then I think I do vaginal progesterone as well. So it's a lot of progesterone. We want a healthy pregnancy. But basically for the transfer, I don't have to be put under anesthesia, which is great. They thaw my embryo out, it's in the freezer right now, and then they put it in a catheter and put it into my uterus. And then we pray and hope that it sticks. Infertility used to be kind of a taboo topic to talk about. You know, when I first started trying to conceive and realizing that we were struggling with infertility, I was so embarrassed about it. You know, friends and family were getting pregnant so easily. And for us, you know, we didn't know what was going on. We felt so different and, you know, so isolated and alone that we didn't really want to talk about it. So, you know, it wasn't until last year that I decided to start my Instagram account, and I started sharing, you know, my feelings, my journey about infertility. It's helped so much. And a lot of women say to me, you helped me, you know, come out and kind of share my story and how much it's helped them. So I think just sharing your story, one, you know, kind of breaks those stigmas down, but it also helps so many other people realize they're not alone and that they can share their journey as well. I think it's important to remember that infertility is a diagnosable medical condition. So, you know, for many of us, we get a lot of unsolicited advice. The big one I get is just relax and it will happen. Unfortunately, for many of us struggling with infertility, relaxing is never going to get us pregnant. You know, there's a medical condition, there's a reason why we're not getting pregnant, and it's not just relaxing. You know, many of us are not going to get pregnant unless we seek fertility treatment to treat our infertility. Another piece of advice I get literally every day, especially from people online, is just adopt. If I were you, that's what I would do. I hate to sound so blunt, but you're not me. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know how I feel. Adoption isn't going to cure my infertility. There's a lot of deep-rooted emotional issues that come with being infertile. But adoption is also expensive. It can take a very long time to do, and you're still not guaranteed a baby in the end. So when somebody tells me to just adopt, you know, there's a lot that goes into that, but it's also like, you know, they're discounting my feelings, they're discounting my infertility, and kind of just my emotions that go along with being infertile. Yes, adoption is something that my husband and I will continue to look into to help build our family. We're not against it at all, but telling an infertile person to just adopt is pretty much one of the most annoying things you can hear. Infertility is very hard to go through. I think the one thing that keeps me going is my husband, Kevin. He's very supportive. You know, we really want to have a child together. We've been trying 4 years to have a child together. So I think just our love for each other and, you know, thinking about our future baby is, you know, what helps us keep going. My advice for other women who are struggling with infertility, the best thing that I've ever done for myself and, you know, something that helps me cope with my infertility is talking about it. Now, you don't have to talk to your friends or family about it if you don't want to, but what's helped me is sharing my journey on social media. On Facebook, I'm in quite a few infertility groups. And then on Instagram, I started my own account where I've been sharing our journey for the last year, a little over a year now. So there's been so much support. There's so many women on there who are going through the same thing I'm going through. So you definitely don't feel alone, and you feel supported. Thank you so much for watching. If you are struggling with infertility, just know you are not alone, and we got this.